The wheelchair wouldn't start. The restaurant was about to close, and Amanda Thompson was seriously considering whether lying about being paralyzed was the worst decision of her 25 years. Her phone buzzed with another text from her mystery date, and she knew this disaster was about to get so much worse. Tell us your city, hit subscribe and get ready for today's story. Let's start. 3 hours earlier, Amanda had been convinced this was the perfect plan. Her well-meaning sister Claire had set up yet another blind date, and Amanda was tired of watching potential suitors disappear the moment they learned about her wheelchair. So when Claire mentioned that Frederick Mitchell was successful, charming and looking for something real, Amanda had made a split-second decision. She'd conveniently forgotten to mention the wheelchair. Amanda wheeled herself into the upscale Italian restaurant 15 minutes late, her heart hammering against her ribs. The battery on her electric wheelchair had chosen this exact moment to start dying, forcing her to rely on the manual backup wheels. Her arms already ached from the effort of getting through the heavy front door. "Reservation for Mitchell," she told the hostess, trying to catch her breath without looking obviously winded. The young woman glanced down at the wheelchair with barely concealed surprise. "Oh, right this way. Mr. Mitchell is already seated." As they wove between tables, Amanda spotted him immediately. Frederick Mitchell sat at a corner table, checking his phone with the focused intensity of a man accustomed to being in control. Even seated, she could tell he was tall, probably 6'2", with salt and pepper hair that suggested distinguished rather than old. His tailored navy suit probably cost more than Amanda made in 3 months as a pediatric nurse. When he looked up, their eyes met across the restaurant. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe confusion. Then his gaze dropped to the wheelchair, and Amanda watched his expression shift through several emotions too quickly to read. He stood slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. At his full height, he was even more imposing than she'd imagined. But it was his eyes that caught her, intelligent, intense, and currently studying her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "Amanda." His voice was deeper than it had sounded on the phone, with a slight roughness that suggested either recent stress or a lifetime of making difficult decisions. "That's me," she said, forcing brightness into her tone. "And you must be Frederick, though I have to say Claire's description didn't do you justice. She said, successful businessman, but she failed to mention you look like you could be on the cover of Fortune 500 magazine." Something in his expression softened, just a fraction, but enough for Amanda to notice. "She mentioned you were a nurse, she didn't mention—" He gestured vaguely toward the wheelchair. "Oh, this old thing?" Amanda patted the armrest with practiced casualness. "It's just my preferred method of transportation. Much faster than walking, plus I never have to worry about finding a good seat." She grinned up at him. "Also, I get excellent parking, right up front every time." Frederick blinked, clearly not expecting humor. Most people didn't. They usually responded with either overwhelming pity or uncomfortable silence. But after a moment, his mouth quirked into what might have been the beginning of a smile. "I see the advantage," he said, moving to help her with her chair positioning. "May I?" "Thanks, but I've got it." Amanda maneuvered herself expertly to the table. 3 years of practice makes you pretty efficient at the parking situation. As Frederick settled back into his seat, Amanda caught him watching her with obvious curiosity, rather than the usual discomfort or forced cheer she was accustomed to. It was refreshing, even if it made her nervous. "So," she said, unfolding her napkin, "tell me about this successful business Claire mentioned. And please don't say something vague like consulting or investments. I get enough mysterious answers from my patients when I ask them how they got their injuries." Frederick's eyebrows rose slightly. "Straight to business, I like that." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I develop and invest in technology companies, software mostly, though I've branched into some hardware ventures. What started as a small software company 15 years ago has grown into something considerably larger." "Modest," Amanda observed. "Let me guess. You're being humble because you think talking about money on a first date makes you sound arrogant. Actually, I'm being modest because most people's eyes glaze over when I start explaining database architecture and user interface design." Amanda laughed, a genuine delighted sound that made Frederick's expression shift again. "Oh, good. A tech nerd. Claire really didn't warn me about that part." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "I have to tell you a secret. I'm actually terrible with technology. Last week I spent 20 minutes trying to figure out why my computer wasn't working before realizing it wasn't plugged in." "That's—" Frederick paused, looking genuinely uncertain for the first time. That's surprisingly honest. I have a policy about honesty, Amanda said, then immediately felt a stab of guilt about the irony. Life's too short to pretend you're good at things you're terrible at. Though I should warn you, I'm excellent at keeping small humans alive, making people laugh when they're scared, and finding the humor in absolutely any situation. So I'm not completely useless. Frederick was definitely smiling now, though he seemed to be fighting it. Small humans. Kids. I work in pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital. Amanda's expression grew more serious. Best job in the world, actually. Those kids are tougher than any adult I've ever met, and funnier too. They don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. They just figure out how to have fun despite whatever's trying to knock them down. Something in Frederick's expression shifted deeper, became more thoughtful. That must be challenging. It is, but it's also amazing. Amanda's eyes lit up. Yesterday, this 8-year-old named Marcus told me he was going to be a professional wrestler when he grows up, because cancer already taught me how to fight. So now I just need to learn the cool moves. She shook her head, grinning. Try staying pessimistic around kids like that. Frederick was quiet for a moment, watching her with an intensity that made Amanda suddenly self-conscious. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. Claire was right about one thing. You are remarkable. Before Amanda could respond, her phone buzzed loudly on the table. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. It was her sister, and the preview text was enough to make her blood run cold. How's the date going? Did you tell him about the wheelchair yet? Or are you still pretending? Frederick's eyes had excellent vision, and he'd always been good at reading upside-down text. Years of boardroom negotiations had taught him to gather information from every available source, including carelessly positioned documents and apparently panicked text messages from meddling sisters. Amanda's face went white as she grabbed for her phone, but Frederick had already seen enough. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, filled with the distant chatter of other diners and the soft clink of silverware. Pretending, Frederick said quietly. It wasn't a question. Amanda closed her eyes for a long moment, then looked up at him with an expression that managed to be both defiant and mortified. I can explain. I'm listening. Frederick's voice was carefully neutral, but Amanda caught the sharp edge underneath. This was a man who didn't like being lied to, and she'd just spectacularly failed her own honesty policy. Okay, first of all, I wasn't pretending to be paralyzed. I actually am paralyzed. Amanda gestured to her legs. Car accident 3 years ago. Complete spinal cord injury at L2. This is real and it's permanent. Frederick's expression flickered with something. Confusion, maybe relief. Then what exactly were you pretending? Amanda took a deep breath. I was pretending that I'd already told you about it. When Claire set this up, I meant to mention the wheelchair situation during our phone conversation, but you were so abnormal. You talked to me like I was just a person, not a patient or a charity case or someone to feel sorry for. Her words came faster now, tumbling over each other. And I liked it. I liked how you listened when I was talking, and how you laughed at my jokes, and how you didn't immediately start asking medical questions or telling me about your cousin's friend who's also in a wheelchair. Frederick was quiet, his fingers drumming silently against the tablecloth. So I kept putting off mentioning it, Amanda continued miserably. First during the phone call, then in the texts. Then I figured I'd tell you when I got here, but when I saw your face, she trailed off, swallowing hard. I panicked. You looked so shocked. And I thought if I could just make you laugh, maybe you'd stick around long enough to realize that the wheelchair doesn't change anything important about me. Doesn't change anything important. Frederick repeated the words slowly, his tone unreadable. It doesn't. Amanda's voice grew stronger. I'm still the same person who can't work technology and loves her job and thinks you look like a magazine cover. I just happen to do all of those things while sitting down. Frederick leaned back in his chair, studying her. You have no idea who I am, do you? The question was so unexpected that Amanda blinked. What do you mean? Frederick Mitchell, Mitchell Technologies. Does that mean anything to you? Amanda shook her head slowly. Should it? For the first time since he'd seen the text message, Frederick's expression softened slightly. Most people who agree to dinner with me have already done extensive research. They know my net worth, my investment portfolio, and probably what I had for breakfast. Oh, Amanda felt heat creep up her neck. How much research should I have done? Because honestly, Claire just said you were successful and single, and that was pretty much the extent of my background check. I'm worth about $47 million, Frederick said matter-of-factly. I own a 12,000 square foot house in Malibu, a penthouse in Manhattan, and more cars than I actually drive. I haven't been on a real date in 3 years because every woman I meet either wants access to my bank account or thinks dating a wealthy man makes her some kind of trophy. Amanda stared at him. 47 million, seriously? Seriously? Wow. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she looked up at him with the expression that was half amused, half incredulous. So, let me get this straight. You're upset because I didn't immediately tell you I'm paralyzed, but you didn't mention that you're basically a millionaire tech mogul. Frederick opened his mouth, then closed it. I mean, I told you I was bad with technology on a date with someone who literally creates technology for a living, Amanda continued, warming to her theme. Talk about an embarrassing discovery. Here I was worried about whether you'd be okay with my wheelchair, and it turns out you probably own the company that makes the software that runs my wheelchair. Despite himself, Frederick felt his mouth twitch. I don't actually invest in mobility devices. Well, that's a missed opportunity. Do you know how expensive these things are? Amanda patted her wheelchair affectionately, though I have to say, for someone worth $47 million, you're surprisingly normal. I was expecting more, I don't know, gold chains? A private helicopter? The helicopter is getting serviced, Frederick said dryly. Amanda burst out laughing, the same delighted, genuine sound from earlier. Oh, you're funny. Claire definitely didn't mention that part. What exactly did Claire tell you about me? Frederick asked. Genuinely curious now. That you were successful, single, kind of serious, but in a good way, and that you'd been asking your assistant about nice, normal women who weren't interested in your money. Amanda tilted her head. She also said you work too much and need someone to make you remember how to have fun. But honestly, I thought she was just doing the typical sister oversell. Frederick was quiet for a long moment. She wasn't wrong. About the working too much part? About all of it. Frederick met her eyes. I haven't laughed this much during dinner in years. Amanda felt something flutter in her chest. Even though I lied to you. You omitted information. There's a difference. Frederick's expression grew more serious. Though I have to ask, is there anything else you're omitting that I should know about? Amanda considered this carefully. Well, I do have a tattoo of a cartoon penguin on my shoulder blade. It seemed like a good idea when I was 19, and I'm lactose intolerant, but I refuse to give up ice cream, so there are consequences. Oh, and I cry during commercial for pet adoption centers. She paused. Is any of that a deal breaker? Frederick found himself smiling again, despite everything. I think I can handle a penguin tattoo. Good, because it's actually pretty cute. His name is Mr. Waddles. Amanda grinned at him. So, does this mean you're staying for dinner? Because I promise, no more surprises. What you see is what you get from here on out. Frederick looked at this extraordinary woman who'd managed to surprise him, challenge him, and make him laugh all in the span of 20 minutes. Who'd been honest about everything except the one thing she'd been too scared to share, and who'd just called him out for his own omission with more humor than accusation. I'm staying, he said quietly, but I have one condition. Amanda's heart skipped. What's that? Next time we skip the restaurant, I want to meet Mr. Waddles. Frederick Mitchell had built his fortune on reading people, on making split-second decisions about character and potential. In 15 years of business, he'd rarely been wrong about someone's fundamental nature. But sitting across from Amanda Thompson, watching her navigate the dinner conversation with a combination of self-deprecating humor and surprising insight, he found himself constantly recalibrating his assumptions. She'd ordered the lobster ravioli without looking at the price, then made jokes about being a fancy dinner amateur while demonstrating perfect table manners. She'd asked intelligent questions about his work, but admitted she'd Googled what is software development in the bathroom just to understand his explanations. And when the server had initially forgotten to bring her a straw, an oversight that would have frustrated most people, she'd simply asked for one with such cheerful politeness that the young man had apologized profusely and brought her 3 different options. You're very patient, Frederick observed as the server hurried away. Occupational hazard, Amanda replied, twirling pasta around her fork with practiced efficiency. When you work with kids, you learn that most problems aren't actually about you. That guy's probably been running around for 6 hours, dealing with difficult customers and hoping his shift ends soon. Getting upset about a missing straw won't change anything, except make both of our days worse. Most people don't think that way. Amanda shrugged. Most people haven't spent 3 years learning that every day you wake up is basically a gift, even if it's not the day you originally planned. She looked up at him with a slight smile. Besides, getting angry about small stuff is exhausting. I save my energy for things that actually matter. Like what? Like kids who are scared, insurance companies that try to deny coverage for necessary equipment, people who park in accessible spaces because they're just running in for a minute. Amanda's expression grew more serious. Those things matter. Missing straws and slow elevators and strangers staring don't. Frederick found himself leaning forward, genuinely interested. Is that something you had to learn? Or were you always like this? Oh, I definitely had to learn it. Amanda laughed, but there was a slight edge to it. Right after the accident, I was furious about everything. The physical therapy was too slow, the wheelchair was too heavy, the doorways were too narrow. I spent about 6 months being angry at the entire world for not being designed for me. What changed? Amanda was quiet for a moment, considering. I met a kid named Danny at the hospital. He was 7, had leukemia, and was the most positive person I'd ever encountered. One day, I was complaining to another nurse about how the elevator was broken again, and Danny heard me. He said, "Miss Amanda, my legs work fine, but I still can't go outside because of my medicine. Your wheelchair works great and you can go anywhere you want. That seems pretty cool to me." Frederick watched her face as she spoke, noting the way her expression softened. "It was like someone had flipped a switch," Amanda continued. "I realized I'd been so focused on what I couldn't do that I'd completely ignored everything I could still do. Danny helped me understand that being paralyzed wasn't the worst thing that could happen to me. Being bitter about it was." "What happened to Danny?" Amanda's smile was radiant. "He's 11 now, in remission for 2 years, and he wants to be a doctor when he grows up so he can fix people like Miss Amanda fixed him. Though I keep telling him I didn't fix anything, he fixed himself." Frederick felt something shift in his chest, a strange combination of admiration and something deeper he couldn't quite name. "You really love your work." "I love the kids," Amanda corrected. "The work can be heartbreaking, but the kids, they're incredible. They face things that would destroy most adults, and they do it with more grace and humor than people 3 times their age." She paused, studying Frederick's expression. "You look like you understand that." "I'm not sure what you mean." "You have this expression you get sometimes when I talk about difficult things or challenges, like you recognize something familiar." Amanda tilted her head. "What's your version of learning that every day is a gift?" Frederick was quiet for so long that Amanda began to think she'd overstepped. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "I lost my wife 6 years ago, cancer. She was 31. Amanda felt her breath catch. "Frederick, I'm so sorry." "Thank you." He looked down at his hands. She handled everything the way you're describing, right up until the end. She was more worried about making sure I would be okay than she was about herself. She used to say that being bitter about circumstances you can't control is like punishing yourself for someone else's crime. She sounds like she was an amazing woman." "She was." Frederick met Amanda's eyes. "And she would have loved you. Sarah always said I needed to find someone who could make me remember how to laugh." Amanda felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Is that why you haven't dated in 3 years? Because you're still grieving?" "Partly," Frederick admitted, "but also because every woman I've met since then has either treated me like a project to be fixed or a prize to be won. No one has just talked to me the way you do." "How do I talk to you?" Frederick considered this. "Like I'm a person instead of a bank account. Like you're interested in what I think, not just what I can provide." He paused. "Like you see me." Amanda felt that flutter again, stronger this time. "I do see you, and for what it's worth, I think Sarah was right. You do need someone to make you laugh. Is that a job application?" Frederick asked, and Amanda was relieved to hear the teasing note back in his voice. "Maybe," she said, grinning. "Though I should warn you, the position comes with some unique requirements. The applicant must be comfortable with frequent hospital visits, occasional medical equipment malfunctions, and a penguin tattoo named Mr. Waddles. Those all sound manageable." "Good, because there's one more requirement." Amanda's expression grew more serious. "Complete honesty from here on out. No more omissions, no more surprises. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, I need to know that we're both being real with each other." Frederick nodded slowly. "Complete honesty." "Good." Amanda lifted her water glass. "In that case, I should probably mention that I've been attracted to you since you stood up when I arrived, And having dinner with you is the most fun I've had in months, and I'm really hoping you'll ask me out again, because I'd like to see if this feeling is real, or just first date adrenaline." Frederick nearly choked on his wine. "That's very honest." "Your turn," Amanda said cheerfully. "Complete honesty. Remember." Frederick looked at this remarkable woman who'd managed to surprise him at every turn, who'd made him laugh more in 2 hours than he had in months, who'd just laid her feelings on the table with the same matter-of-fact courage she seemed to apply to everything else. "I've been attracted to you since you made that joke about excellent parking," he said quietly. "And you're right. This is the most fun I've had in a long time. And yes, I absolutely want to see you again because I have a feeling you're going to keep surprising me." Amanda beamed at him. "In that case, Mr. Mitchell, I think this might be the beginning of something interesting." The second date happened 3 days later, which Frederick later realized was the first time in his adult life he'd rearranged his schedule for anything that wasn't directly related to making money. When Amanda had texted to ask if he wanted to meet for coffee, he'd moved a conference call with investors in Tokyo and delegated a board meeting to his assistant without a second thought. He found her at a small cafe near the hospital, arriving early enough to watch her navigate the narrow space between tables with the kind of unconscious expertise that spoke of years of practice. She'd traded her dinner dress for scrubs and a cardigan, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger and somehow more approachable. "Caillou came straight from work," Frederick observed as he sat down across from her. "Emergency surgery on a 6-year-old, Amanda explained, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. "Appendectomy. She was terrified because she thought the surgery would hurt her stuffed elephant, so I had to explain that we only fix people, not toys." She smiled, "though I did promise to have one of the nurses check on the elephant while she was in surgery, just to be safe." "And did you?" "Of course. The elephant made a full recovery." Amanda's expression grew more serious. "How was your day? You look tired." Frederick was surprised by the observation. Most people didn't notice when he was tired, or if they did, they didn't comment on it. "Long meeting with potential investors. Sometimes I forget how exhausting it is to explain the same concepts over and over to people who won't listen." Mansplaining, but in reverse. Something like that. Frederick found himself smiling. "Though I've never heard it described quite that way. I get a lot of practice reading people," Amanda said. "Pediatric nursing is basically professional people-watching. You learn to spot who's going to faint during blood draws, which parents need extra reassurance, and which kids are going to try to escape from the examination room." "And what do you see when you look at me?" Amanda tilted her head, studying him with the same focused attention she probably gave her patients. "I see someone who's used to being in control, but who's also kind of lonely. You have excellent manners, which suggests good upbringing, but you check your phone more than most people, which usually means you're avoiding something." She paused. "And you have laugh lines around your eyes, but they look underused lately." Frederick felt strangely exposed under her assessment. "That's remarkably accurate. Am I right about the avoiding something part 2? Frederick was quiet for a moment. "I work a lot because it's easier than going home to an empty house." "Is that what you meant?" "Partly." Amanda's expression was gentle. "But I also think you're avoiding the possibility of caring about someone again, because that would mean risking losing them." The words hit closer to home than Frederick was prepared for. "You really don't pull any punches, do you?" "I told you I had a policy about honesty," Amanda reminded him. "Besides, I think you need someone who'll call you on your avoidance strategies. Otherwise, you'll just keep working yourself to death to avoid feeling anything. And you think you're qualified to do that?" "I think I'm uniquely qualified to understand what it's like to rebuild your life after losing everything you thought it was supposed to be," Amanda said quietly. "The difference is I had to rebuild because I didn't have a choice. You're choosing to stay in the ruins because rebuilding feels too scary." Frederick stared at her, feeling something shift in his chest, part recognition, part resistance. "That's a pretty big assumption based on 2 dates." "You're right," Amanda agreed. "I could be completely wrong. Maybe you're perfectly happy with your current life and you don't need anyone to make you laugh or challenge you or remind you that there's more to existence than work and avoiding feelings." "And if I am happy with my current life?" Amanda shrugged, but Frederick caught the flicker of something vulnerable in her expression. "Then I guess I misread the situation, and you're probably not looking for what I'm looking for." "What are you looking for?" "Someone who sees the wheelchair as just another detail, not the defining characteristic. Someone who makes me want to be brave about more than just medical procedures. Someone who—" She paused, color rising in her cheeks. Someone who makes me feel like Amanda, not just the girl in the wheelchair. Frederick felt his chest tighten. And you think I could be that someone? I think you already are, Amanda said softly. The question is whether you're willing to let me be that someone for you. Before Frederick could respond, Amanda's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression immediately shifted to concern. I have to take this, she said, answering quickly. Dr. Martinez speaking. Frederick watched her face as she listened, noting the way her professional mask slipped into place. When she hung up, she was already reaching for her bag. I have to go back to the hospital, she said apologetically. One of my patients is having complications. Is it serious? Could be. Amanda was transferring from her chair to her wheelchair with smooth efficiency. 8-year-old with a post-surgical infection. His parents are terrified and he's asking for me specifically. Frederick stood as she prepared to leave. Can I drive you? You don't have to. I want to. The words came out more intense than Frederick had intended. Please. Amanda looked up at him with surprise. Okay, but I have to warn you. This could take hours. Hospital emergencies don't follow convenient schedules. I don't have anywhere else to be. As they made their way to Frederick's car, a sleek BMW that Amanda noted was probably worth more than her annual salary, she found herself stealing glances at his profile. He'd offered to drive without hesitation, rearranged his evening without complaint, and seemed genuinely concerned about a child he'd never met. You know, she said as Frederick adjusted the passenger seat to accommodate her wheelchair, most people would have said, call me later and gone home. I'm not most people, Frederick replied, then paused. At least I don't want to be. Amanda felt that flutter again, stronger now and accompanied by something deeper. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Good, she said quietly, because I really don't want you to be most people either. As they drove through the city toward the hospital, Amanda found herself thinking that this felt like a turning point, not just in whatever was developing between them, but in who Frederick was choosing to be. And for the first time since her accident, she found herself genuinely excited about where her life might be heading. The pediatric ward at 2 a.m. was a place of soft sounds and careful movements, monitors beeping quietly, nurses walking in cushioned shoes, the distant murmur of concerned voices. Frederick sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair outside room 412, watching Amanda through the glass window as she worked with 8-year-old Marcus Rivera and his exhausted parents. For the past 4 hours, he'd observed a version of Amanda he'd never seen before. This wasn't the charming woman who made penguin jokes over dinner, or the insightful person who gently dissected his emotional avoidance strategies over coffee. This was Amanda the professional, calm, competent, and completely focused on keeping a frightened child stable while managing his parents' panic and coordinating with a team of doctors. She'd been right about hospital emergencies not following convenient schedules. What had started as a simple infection check had escalated when Marcus's temperature spiked and his breathing became labored. Frederick had watched Amanda transition seamlessly from friend to medical advocate, holding Marcus's hand while explaining to his parents why additional tests were necessary, then stepping aside to consult with doctors, before returning to make silly faces that got the boy to smile despite his discomfort. You're still here? Frederick looked up to find Amanda wheeling herself toward him, looking exhausted, but relieved. It was nearly 3 a.m. and the crisis had finally passed. How is he? Frederick asked, standing. Better. The infection responded to the stronger antibiotics and his breathing has stabilized. He'll be fine, but it was touch and go for a while. Amanda rubbed her eyes tiredly. His parents finally went home to get some sleep. I promised I'd stay until the morning shift arrived. Frederick looked at her more closely, noting the fatigue in her expression and the way she was unconsciously rubbing her shoulder. When was the last time you ate something? I had coffee around. What time is it now? 3:15. Then around 11 this morning. Maybe noon. Amanda blinked slowly. Actually, I'm not sure. Without saying anything, Frederick disappeared down the hallway. He returned 15 minutes later with a bag from the hospital's 24-hour cafe and a cup of hot chocolate from a vending machine. Chocolate chip muffin, turkey sandwich, and something that's supposedly hot chocolate, but tastes more like chocolate-flavored water, he announced, setting everything on the small table beside her chair. The cafe worker assured me the muffin was made today, though I'm not entirely convinced. Amanda stared at the food, then up at Frederick. You didn't have to do that. You haven't eaten in 15 hours, And you've been working non-stop. Someone had to. Frederick sat back down in the plastic chair. Besides, I figured if you passed out from hunger, I'd have to explain to Marcus why his favorite nurse wasn't around to make faces at him tomorrow. You've been watching, Amanda observed, unwrapping the sandwich. It's hard not to watch. You're remarkable with those kids. Amanda paused mid-bite. What do you mean? I watched you calm down Marcus's parents when they were getting hysterical. Then you made the doctors explain everything in terms they could understand. Then you got Marcus to laugh when he was scared about the breathing treatment. And you did all of it without making anyone feel stupid or panicked. Frederick leaned forward slightly. You made everyone in that room feel like everything was going to be okay, even when you weren't sure it would be. Amanda felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. That's just part of the job. No, it's not. That's a gift. Frederick's voice was quiet but certain. I've been in enough high-pressure situations to know the difference between competence and genuine care. What you do isn't just technical skill. It's who you are. Amanda looked down at her sandwich, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. I've never had someone watch me work before. It's kind of intense. Good intense or bad intense? Good, I think. It's just... She struggled to find the words. Most people see the wheelchair first, then maybe notice what I do. You seem to see what I do first. Because what you do is extraordinary, Frederick said simply. The wheelchair is just how you get around while doing extraordinary things. Amanda felt tears prick at her eyes, and she blinked them back quickly. You can't say things like that to someone who hasn't slept in 20 hours. I might start crying, and that would be embarrassing for both of us. I wouldn't be embarrassed, Frederick said softly. They sat in comfortable silence while Amanda ate, the hospital's nighttime quiet surrounding them. Frederick found himself thinking about the past few hours, about watching Amanda navigate a crisis with the kind of grace and competence he'd spent years trying to cultivate in his business life. But where his professional skills felt calculated and strategic, her approach seemed effortless and genuine. Can I ask you something? Amanda said finally. Why did you stay? Really? You could have left hours ago. Frederick considered the question carefully. Because I wanted to understand. Understand what? Who you are when no one's expecting anything from you. When you're not trying to charm anyone or prove anything. Frederick met her eyes. I wanted to see if the woman I'm falling for is real, or if she's just good at first impressions. Amanda's heart stopped. Falling for. Yes, Frederick said quietly. And after tonight, I'm certain she's real. Amanda set down her sandwich, her hands suddenly unsteady. Frederick, I know it's only been 2 dates. I know this is probably too fast and too complicated, and there are probably 100 reasons why this won't work. Frederick's voice grew stronger. But I also know that I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah died, and I don't want to pretend I don't. Amanda stared at him, her mind racing. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying I want to see where this goes. I want to take you on real dates, not just coffee meetings. I want to meet Mr. Waddles and learn about your terrible taste in movies and figure out how to make you laugh when you've had days like today. Frederick paused. I'm saying I think you were right about me being afraid to rebuild, but I'm more afraid of missing this chance with you. Amanda felt her heart hammering against her ribs. That's terrifying. Yes, it is. And complicated. Extremely. And probably a terrible idea for both of us. But even as she said it, Amanda was smiling. Probably, Frederick agreed. Are you willing to find out? Amanda looked at this man who'd spent 4 hours in an uncomfortable hospital chair just to be near her, who'd brought her food without being asked, who'd watched her work and seen something extraordinary instead of just adequate, who'd been honest about his fear and his feelings, and who was asking her to be brave with him. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'm willing to find out. Frederick's smile was radiant. Good, because I have a feeling this is going to be the adventure of a lifetime. As they sat together in the quiet hospital corridor, Amanda realized that for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't thinking about what she'd lost. She was thinking about what she might be gaining, and it felt like the most terrifying, wonderful thing that had ever happened to her. 3 weeks later, Frederick Mitchell was learning that dating Amanda Thompson required a complete recalibration of his understanding of what constituted a romantic evening. Instead of 5-star restaurants and exclusive venues, he found himself at a bowling alley on a Thursday night, watching Amanda trash-talk a group of teenage cancer patients who challenged her to a game. You kids think you're tough, Amanda called out as she lined up her shot. I've been using these arm muscles to push myself around for 3 years. This is my home turf advantage. 15-year-old Sarah Jenkins, currently in remission and sporting a bright purple wig, rolled her eyes dramatically. Miss Amanda, you're like 90 years old. We've got youth on our side. 90? Amanda gasped in mock outrage. Frederick, did you hear that? She called me 90. Frederick, who'd been watching this interaction with growing fascination, grinned. I heard it. Completely unreasonable. You're clearly no more than 85. The teenagers erupted in laughter, and Amanda shot him a look of pure betrayal. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. I'm just being realistic about your chances against these clearly superior athletes, Frederick said, gesturing to the group of kids who were now cheering and high-fiving each other. Amanda's competitive response was interrupted by 17-year-old Marcus Thompson, no relation despite sharing her last name, wheeling up in his own chair. Marcus had been paralyzed in a diving accident 2 years earlier, and Amanda had worked with him during his initial treatment for complications. Mr. Frederick, Marcus said seriously, you need to understand that Miss Amanda takes bowling very personally. Like, weirdly personally. Last time she lost to us, she made us all do extra physical therapy exercises. That was educational, Amanda protested. You all needed to work on your upper body strength. She made us do push-ups, Sarah added, while she sat there eating ice cream and giving commentary. Frederick looked between Amanda and the teenagers, noting the obvious affection and easy teasing that characterized their relationships. These kids clearly adored her, but they also felt comfortable enough to give her a hard time, something that spoke to the genuine connection she'd built with each of them. So what you're telling me, Frederick said thoughtfully, is that my girlfriend is a terrible sport and a petty winner. The worst, Marcus confirmed solemnly. But we love her anyway. Frederick felt something warm settle in his chest at the easy way Marcus had accepted his presence, the casual acknowledgement of his relationship with Amanda. Over the past 3 weeks, he'd met several of her patients and colleagues, and each interaction had reinforced his growing understanding of how deeply embedded she was in the lives of the people she cared for. Okay, enough strategy sessions, Amanda announced, rolling up to the lane. Time to show these children how it's done. Her first ball knocked down 7 pins, and the teenagers cheered mockingly. Ooh, 7 whole pins, Sarah said. We're so intimidated. Amanda lined up her second shot with exaggerated concentration, tongue sticking out slightly as she aimed. The remaining 3 pins scattered, and she turned to Frederick with triumphant arms raised. Spare. Did you see that? Perfect execution. I saw it, Frederick said, applauding appropriately. Very impressive. Almost athletic even. Almost athletic? Amanda's eyes narrowed dangerously. Marcus, I'm changing my mind about Mr. Frederick. I don't think I like him anymore. Too late, Marcus grinned. You already introduced him as your boyfriend. You're stuck with him now. As the evening progressed, Frederick found himself drawn into the easy camaraderie of the group. The teenagers peppered him with questions about his work, his car, and his intentions regarding their beloved Miss Amanda. Their interrogation was thorough, surprisingly insightful, and completely lacking in the usual deference he experienced from most people once they learned about his wealth. So you make computer stuff? 16-year-old David asked during a break between frames. Software, mostly. Programs that help other programs work better together, Frederick explained. Cool. Can you make a program that does my homework? David, Amanda warned, laughing. What? It's a reasonable question. If he can make millions of dollars with computers, maybe he can help me pass algebra. I could probably help you understand algebra, Frederick offered. Though I should warn you, I'm a bit of a nerd about mathematics. David's eyes lit up. Really? Because I've been stuck on this one problem for weeks, and Miss Amanda is useless at math. I heard that, Amanda called from where she was helping Sarah with her bowling technique. You know it's true, David called back. You had to ask me to calculate the tip at lunch last week. Frederick spent the next 20 minutes explaining algebraic concepts to David, using bowling pins as visual aids and discovering that the teenager was actually quite bright. He'd just been missing some foundational concepts that his illness-related absences had caused him to skip. You're really good at this, Amanda observed quietly, rolling up beside them. Teaching, I mean. I like explaining things to people who actually want to learn, Frederick replied. It's refreshing after spending most of my time with people who think they already know everything. David's been struggling with math since he missed so much school during treatment, Amanda said softly. His regular tutor quit because she said he wasn't applying himself, but I know he's just missing pieces. Frederick looked at the teenager, who was now successfully working through a problem independently, tongue stuck out in the same concentration expression Amanda used when bowling. Would he be interested in regular tutoring? I have some free time in the evenings. Amanda stared at him. You'd do that? I'd enjoy it, actually. It's been years since I taught anyone anything that wasn't related to profit margins and market analysis. When they finally announced the end of the game, the teenagers had won by a significant margin. To Amanda's theatrical despair, the group gathered around their table for pizza and continued conversation. Frederick watched Amanda navigate the social dynamics with each kid, remembering details about their treatments, their families, their hopes and fears. She teased them mercilessly but also listened with complete attention when they wanted to talk about something serious. You're different with them than you are with adults, Frederick observed as they drove home later that evening. How do you mean? More yourself, I think. Less careful. Frederick glanced over at her. It's like you don't feel the need to prove anything to them. Amanda considered this. Kids don't care about the wheelchair. They care about whether you're genuine and whether you'll show up when you say you will. She paused. Adults are more complicated. They want to feel good about themselves for being nice to the disabled girl, or they want to fix me, or they're uncomfortable and pretending they're not. Kids just want to know if I'm going to be real with them. And I was real with them tonight. You were perfect with them tonight, Amanda said softly. David's been struggling for months and you figured out exactly what he needed in 20 minutes. And you offered to help, without making it sound like charity. Frederick felt warmth spread through his chest. They're good kids. The best kids. And they liked you, which is actually a pretty serious endorsement. They're tough critics. As Frederick walked Amanda to her apartment door, he found himself thinking about the evening, about how natural it had felt to be part of her world, how easily the teenagers had accepted him, how much he'd enjoyed teaching David and watching Amanda's competitive bowling commentary. Thank you, Amanda said as they reached her door. For tonight, for being so good with them, for offering to help David. Thank you for sharing them with me, Frederick replied. I can see why you love what you do. Amanda looked up at him with an expression that made his heart skip. I'm falling for you. Frederick Mitchell, hard and fast and probably unwisely. Frederick cupped her face gently. Unwisely. Well, you're worth $47 million. You're ridiculously handsome, and you just offered to tutor a teenager in algebra for free. You're either too good to be true or I'm about to get my heart completely destroyed. Frederick kissed her softly, tasting hope and fear and something deeper. For what it's worth, I'm falling for you too. Hard and fast and definitely unwisely. Why unwisely? Because you're brave and brilliant and you make me want to be a better person than I thought I could be. And that's terrifying. Amanda smiled against his lips. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? The best kind of terrifying, Frederick whispered, and kissed her again. The crisis began with a phone call at 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Frederick woke to his cell phone ringing insistently, Amanda's name on the caller ID. In the 2 months they'd been dating, she'd never called him before 9 a.m. She was religious about letting people sleep in on weekends. Amanda, what's wrong? Frederick answered immediately, already reaching for clothes. Frederick, I need your help. Amanda's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. My insurance company is trying to deny coverage for my new wheelchair, and they're demanding a review of all my equipment. If they succeed, I could lose everything. Frederick was instantly alert. What kind of everything? My wheelchair, my modified car, my accessibility equipment for the apartment, everything that lets me be independent. Amanda's voice cracked slightly. They're claiming my current equipment is luxury accommodations beyond medical necessity, and that I should be able to function with basic manual options. That's insane. Where are you? At the hospital. I got called in for an emergency surgery, and my chair's battery died completely in the parking garage. The manual backup isn't working properly, and I'm basically stranded. One of the security guards had to help me get inside, and I can't get to my car. Frederick was already grabbing his keys. I'm coming to get you. Which hospital? Children's Hospital, West Entrance parking garage. But Frederick, this isn't just about today. If they succeed with this review, I won't be able to work. I won't be able to live independently. I'll have to move back in with my parents and give up everything I've built. The fear in her voice made Frederick's chest tighten. That's not going to happen, Frederick said firmly. Happen. We'll figure this out. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When Frederick found Amanda in the hospital lobby, she was sitting in a borrowed manual wheelchair that was clearly not fitted for her body type. She looked exhausted and frustrated, and when she saw him, her expression crumpled with relief. "This chair is awful," she said without preamble. "It's too wide, the wheels are too far forward, and I can barely reach them properly. I've been trying to get to the parking garage for 45 minutes. Frederick knelt down beside her chair, his expression serious. "Tell me everything about the insurance situation, from the beginning." "They sent a letter yesterday saying they're conducting a comprehensive review of my durable medical equipment coverage. Apparently, someone reported that my wheelchair and car modifications are excessive for my level of disability." Amanda's voice was bitter. "They want me to undergo new evaluations to prove I actually need everything I have." "Someone reported you? Who would do that?" "I don't know. But whoever it was knew exactly which equipment to target and what language to use to trigger a review. This wasn't random." Frederick felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Amanda, have you mentioned our relationship to anyone recently? Posted about it on social media?" "No, I'm not really on social media." "Why?" Amanda looked at him with growing concern. "Frederick, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking someone might be targeting you because of me." Frederick ran his hands through his hair, his expression grim. "I've made enemies in business over the years. People who've lost money because of my decisions. Competitors who don't like being outmaneuvered. If someone wanted to hurt me, going after someone I care about would be an effective strategy." Amanda stared at him. "You think someone is trying to destroy my independence to get back at you?" "I think it's possible. The timing is too convenient, and the level of detailed knowledge about your equipment suggests research." Frederick's voice grew harder. "Professional targeted research." "Oh God." Amanda covered her face with her hands. "This is what I was afraid of. This is exactly what I was afraid of." "What do you mean?" "I mean that dating you was always going to come with consequences I couldn't predict. I just didn't think they'd be this devastating." Amanda looked up at him with eyes that were bright with unshed tears. "Frederick, if I lose my equipment, I lose everything. My job, my independence, my ability to take care of myself. I'd have to depend on other people for everything, and I can't do that. I won't do that." Frederick felt something break open in his chest at the raw fear in her voice. "We're going to fix this." "How?" "Even if you're right about someone targeting me, how do we prove it? And even if we can prove it, the insurance company still has the right to conduct reviews. They can still decide I don't need what I have." "Because I'm going to make some phone calls," Frederick said quietly. "And I'm going to remind some people that targeting innocent civilians in business disputes is illegal and carries serious consequences." "Frederick, you can't just threaten people." "I'm not going to threaten anyone. I'm going to gather information." Frederick's expression was controlled, but Amanda caught the flash of something dangerous in his eyes. "And then, I'm going to make sure that whoever is responsible understands that they made a serious mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind where they assumed I wouldn't fight back." Frederick stood, pulling out his phone. "The kind where they underestimated how far I'll go to protect someone I love." Amanda's breath caught. "Love?" Frederick looked down at her, his expression softening despite the anger still simmering underneath. "Yes, love. I love you, Amanda Thompson. I love your strength and your courage and your terrible bowling technique. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let anyone hurt you because of me." Amanda felt tears spill over, but they were complicated tears, part relief, part terror, part overwhelming emotion at hearing him say those words under these circumstances. "I love you too," she whispered. "But Frederick, what if we can't fix this? What if loving you costs me everything I've worked for?" Frederick knelt down again, taking her hands in his. "Then we'll rebuild everything together. But we're not going to lose anything, because I'm not going to let that happen." As Frederick began making phone calls, his voice growing progressively colder and more controlled with each conversation, Amanda found herself caught between hope and terror. She'd known that dating him would complicate her life, but she'd never imagined that someone might use her disability as a weapon against him. And now, sitting in an uncomfortable borrowed wheelchair in a hospital lobby, she realized that loving Frederick Mitchell might be the most dangerous thing she'd ever done. By Monday morning, Frederick had confirmed his worst suspicions. The attack on Amanda's insurance coverage wasn't random. It was systematic, personal, and orchestrated by someone with both detailed knowledge of disability benefits law and access to private investigators. "Richard Blackwood," Frederick announced grimly, setting down his phone after a 40-minute conversation with his head of security. He was pacing around Amanda's living room while she worked on her laptop at the kitchen table, trying to prepare appeals documentation for the insurance company. "Should I know that name?" Amanda asked, not looking up from her screen. "He's the CEO of Blackwood Industries. I outbid him for a major software acquisition 3 years ago, and it cost his company about $20 million in projected revenue." Frederick stopped pacing, his expression dark. "Apparently, he's been holding a grudge. And you think he's behind this?" "I know he's behind this. My security team traced the complaint back to a law firm that specializes in disability benefits fraud investigation. The same law firm that Blackwood Industries used last year to challenge workers' compensation claims from their own employees." Amanda finally looked up from her laptop, her face pale. "So this really is happening because I'm dating you?" "Yes." Frederick's voice was tight with controlled anger. "And I'm going to make sure Blackwood understands exactly what kind of mistake he's made." "Frederick, what are you planning to do?" "I'm going to destroy him," Frederick said matter-of-factly. "Professionally, financially, and legally. I'm going to make sure he never works in this industry again." Amanda stared at him, seeing something in his expression that she'd never witnessed before. Cold, calculated fury that spoke of someone accustomed to wielding significant power. For the first time since she'd met him, Frederick looked dangerous. "You can't just destroy someone's career because they went after me," Amanda said carefully. "Watch me." Frederick's voice was ice. "He didn't just go after you, Amanda. He weaponized your disability to try to strip away your independence. He researched your medical history, your equipment needs, your employment situation, and then used all of that information to try to make you helpless. That's not a business dispute. That's personal warfare, and it's illegal. But if you retaliate, won't that just escalate things?" Frederick looked at her with an expression that was part surprise, part admiration. "Most people would want me to retaliate. They'd be demanding revenge." "I'm not most people," Amanda said quietly. "And revenge won't get my equipment coverage restored. It won't fix the damage that's already been done. No, but it will prevent him from trying again. And it will send a message to anyone else who might consider using similar tactics." Frederick sat down across from her at the table. "Amanda, I have the resources to fight this battle. Let me use them. And what happens to us while you're busy destroying Richard Blackwood? What happens to our relationship while you're engaged in corporate warfare?" Frederick was quiet for a moment. "What do you mean?" "I mean that the moment you start using your wealth and power to solve my problems, everything changes between us. Instead of being equals in a relationship, I become someone you're rescuing, someone you're protecting, someone whose problems you fix because you can, not because I asked you to." The words hit Frederick like a physical blow. "That's not what this is, isn't it?" Amanda's voice was gentle but firm. "Frederick, I've spent 3 years building a life where I don't need to be rescued, where I can take care of myself and solve my own problems. If you start fighting my battles for me, no matter how good your intentions are, you turn me into someone who needs protecting, instead of someone who can protect herself. But you can't fight Blackwood Industries alone. You don't have the resources or the connections." "You're right. I can't fight a corporate enemy alone." Amanda closed her laptop and looked directly at him. "But I can fight my insurance company. I can document my medical needs, gather supporting evidence, and appeal their decision through proper channels. I can be my own advocate, the way I've been advocating for my patients for years." Frederick felt frustration building in his chest. "That could take months, and there's no guarantee it will work." "No, there isn't, but it will be my victory if I win, not yours." Amanda reached across the table to take his hand. "Frederick, I understand that you want to protect me. I even understand why you think destroying Blackwood is the right solution. But if you do that, you change who I am in this relationship. I don't want to change who you are. Then let me fight my own battle. Support me, advise me, help me research and prepare, but don't fight it for me." Frederick looked at this extraordinary woman who was asking him to stand back and watch her struggle with a problem he could solve with a few phone calls. Every instinct he'd developed over 15 years of business told him to use his power, his connections, his resources to eliminate the threat quickly and permanently. But as he looked into Amanda's eyes, he realized she was asking him to do something much harder than destroying an enemy. She was asking him to trust her to save herself. "What about Blackwood?" Frederick asked finally. "If I don't retaliate, he might try again. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Together." Amanda squeezed his hand. "But Frederick, if you make me someone who needs to be rescued, I'll never know if you love me for who I am, Or because protecting me makes you feel powerful? The words cut deeper than Frederick had expected. You think I want to feel powerful? I think you're used to solving problems with money and influence, and this is the first time someone you love has asked you not to. Amanda's voice was soft but unwavering. I think you're scared that if you don't fix this, something terrible will happen to me. And I think you're not used to being scared. Frederick was quiet for a long moment, recognizing the truth in her assessment. He was scared, terrified actually, of watching her lose everything because of him. The thought of Amanda being stripped of her independence, of being forced to give up her career and her autonomy, made him feel sick with rage and helplessness. But he was also beginning to understand what she was really asking for. Not protection, but partnership. Not rescue, but respect. Okay, he said finally. We do this your way, but I have one condition. What's that? You let me help with the research and documentation. Not because you can't do it alone, but because I want to be part of your team. Amanda smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed since the crisis began. I'd like that. I'd like having you on my team. As they began working together on her appeal, Frederick found himself in unfamiliar territory. Instead of commanding and controlling, he was supporting and collaborating. Instead of solving Amanda's problem for her, he was helping her solve it herself. And for the first time in his adult life, he discovered that partnership felt more powerful than dominance ever had. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later, during what was supposed to be a routine meeting with Amanda's insurance case manager. Frederick had insisted on attending as moral support, but what they discovered changed everything about their understanding of the situation. I have to tell you, Miss Thompson, your case has been very unusual, case manager Patricia Williams said, shuffling through a thick file. We've received multiple complaints about your equipment being excessive, but when we actually reviewed your medical records and conducted our own evaluation, we found that your current setup is not only medically necessary, but actually quite conservative compared to what we typically approve for similar injuries. Amanda exchanged glances with Frederick. Multiple complaints? Yes, which is what triggered the comprehensive review. Usually we get one complaint, investigate it, and close the file. But your case generated complaints from 3 different sources over the course of 6 months, all using very specific medical terminology and citing exact equipment model numbers. Patricia frowned at her paperwork. It was almost like someone was conducting a systematic campaign to have your coverage revoked. Do you know who filed the complaints? Frederick asked carefully. Well, that's the interesting part. All 3 complaints came from different people, but when we tried to verify the complainants' identities for our investigation, we discovered some irregularities. Amanda felt her heart start racing. What kind of irregularities? 2 of the 3 people who filed complaints don't actually exist. The names, addresses, and phone numbers were fake. The 3rd person is real, but when we contacted her, she had no knowledge of filing any complaint about your equipment. Frederick felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. Someone used her identity without her knowledge. It appears so, which constitutes insurance fraud, by the way. We've referred the matter to our fraud investigation department and to law enforcement. Patricia looked up from her file. Miss Thompson, do you have any idea who might want to cause problems with your insurance coverage? Amanda looked at Frederick, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. They'd agreed beforehand that they would be truthful if directly asked, but wouldn't volunteer information about Blackwood without proof. I've been dating someone who has business enemies, Amanda said carefully. We think someone might be targeting me to get to him. Patricia's eyebrows rose. That's disturbing, and unfortunately not unheard of. We've seen cases where people try to weaponize the insurance system for personal vendettas. She made a note in Amanda's file. The good news is that based on our review, your equipment coverage will be fully reinstated, and we'll be adding a flag to your account to alert us to any future suspicious complaints. What about the investigation? Frederick asked. Our fraud department will continue working with law enforcement to identify who was behind the false complaints. If they can prove intentional fraud, criminal charges could be filed. As they left the insurance office, Amanda felt a mixture of relief and lingering unease. So my coverage is safe, but we still don't know exactly who did this or whether they'll try again. Actually, we might know more than you think, Frederick said quietly. I made some additional phone calls while you were preparing for today's meeting. Amanda stopped walking, turning to face him in the parking lot. What kind of phone calls? The kind where I asked my security team to investigate Richard Blackwood's recent activities more thoroughly. Frederick's expression was grim. And what they found is very interesting. Frederick, you promised we would handle this legally. We are handling it legally, but that doesn't mean I can't gather information. Frederick pulled out his phone, showing her a series of documents. Blackwood Industries hired a private investigation firm 6 weeks ago, the same firm that specializes in insurance fraud cases. The same firm that 3 of their investigators used false identities to file complaints against you. Amanda stared at the documents. You have proof? I have enough proof to take to the FBI. This isn't just insurance fraud, Amanda. It's interstate fraud, identity theft, and probably several other federal crimes. Blackwood used his company's resources to commit felonies against you. Oh my God! Amanda sank down onto a nearby bench, overwhelmed. This is real. Someone really tried to destroy my life because I'm dating you. Frederick sat down beside her, his expression softening. I'm so sorry, Amanda. This is my fault. If you hadn't been with me, none of this would have happened. Don't you dare apologize for this. Amanda's voice was fierce. You didn't do anything wrong. Richard Blackwood is the one who chose to target an innocent person to satisfy some petty business grudge. This is not your fault, but it is my responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen again. Amanda looked at him carefully. What are you planning to do? I'm planning to give all of this evidence to the FBI and let them handle the criminal case. I'm planning to support you through whatever legal proceedings might follow. And I'm planning to make sure Blackwood Industries faces civil liability for what they've done. Civil liability? Frederick's expression grew harder. They used corporate resources to commit crimes against you. That makes the company itself liable for damages, financial, emotional, and punitive. We can sue them for enough money to make sure they never consider trying something like this again. Amanda was quiet for a long moment, processing. That's not revenge, that's justice. Yes, it is, and it's your choice whether to pursue it or not. Frederick took her hand. But Amanda, I need you to understand something. This attack wasn't just about me. It was about you. They researched your life, your medical history, your vulnerabilities, and they used all of that to try to harm you. You have the right to hold them accountable for that. Amanda looked down at their joined hands, thinking about everything that had happened over the past month. The fear, the uncertainty, the feeling of having her independence threatened by forces beyond her control, the knowledge that someone had deliberately tried to strip away everything she'd worked to build. I want them held accountable, she said finally, not for revenge, but because what they did was wrong, and because if we don't stop them, they might try to hurt someone else. Frederick squeezed her hand. Then we hold them accountable. Together. Together, Amanda agreed. Then she looked up at him with an expression that was part gratitude, part love, part fierce determination. But Frederick, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that this doesn't change us. Promise me that going through this together doesn't make you think I need protecting, or that I'm fragile, or that loving me means you have to shield me from the world. Frederick cupped her face gently. Amanda, watching you handle this situation has shown me exactly how strong you are. You faced the possibility of losing everything that matters to you, and you did it with grace and courage and determination to fight for yourself. You don't need protecting. You need someone who recognizes your strength and supports it. And you think you can be that someone? I know I can be that someone, because you've already made me a better man than I thought I could be. Amanda kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, she was smiling. Good, she said, because I have a feeling this is just the beginning of our adventures together. 6 months later, Amanda stood in the ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel, wearing a midnight blue dress that Frederick had insisted on buying her, and trying not to laugh as she watched him give a speech to 300 of the city's most influential business leaders. When I started Mitchell Technologies 15 years ago, Frederick was saying from the podium, I thought success was measured purely in profit margins and market share. I thought the only relationships that mattered were the ones that could advance my business objectives. Amanda caught Claire's eye from across the room and grinned. Her sister mouthed, I told you so, with exaggerated smugness, clearly delighted that her matchmaking had resulted in such an obvious success story. But this year, I learned something that fundamentally changed my understanding of what it means to build something valuable. Frederick continued, I learned that the most important partnerships aren't transactional, they're transformational. They don't just change what you can accomplish, They change who you become. Amanda felt her heart skip as Frederick's eyes found hers across the room. He was supposed to be announcing Mitchell Technologies' new charitable foundation, but his speech kept veering into territory that sounded suspiciously personal. Which brings me to the real reason for tonight's event. Mitchell Technologies is proud to announce the establishment of the Sarah Mitchell Foundation for Pediatric Care Innovation. Frederick's voice grew stronger, more passionate. Named for my late wife, who believed that every child deserves access to the best possible medical care, regardless of their family's financial circumstances. The applause was immediate and sustained, but Frederick held up his hand to continue. The foundation will focus on 3 areas: funding for pediatric medical equipment that insurance companies consider excessive, grants for children's hospitals to hire additional specialized nurses, and legal advocacy for families whose insurance claims are denied for discriminatory reasons. Amanda felt tears prick at her eyes as she realized what Frederick had done. Every aspect of the foundation directly addressed problems she'd encountered in her work or personal life. This wasn't just charity, it was a systematic approach to fixing the broken systems that had nearly cost her everything. But announcing the foundation isn't the most important thing I have to say tonight, Frederick continued, and Amanda's breath caught as he stepped away from the podium and began walking directly toward her. "Oh my God," Claire whispered loudly enough for half the ballroom to hear. "Is he about to—" "Frederick, what are you doing?" Amanda hissed as he approached, her heart hammering against her ribs. 300 people were watching, many of them pulling out phones to record whatever was about to happen. "Something I should have done months ago," Frederick said, dropping to one knee beside her wheelchair. The ballroom went completely silent. "Amanda Thompson," Frederick said, his voice carrying clearly through the sudden hush. "6 months ago, you walked into my life and completely destroyed every assumption I had about what mattered. You made me laugh. You challenged my worst habits. You stood up to insurance companies and private investigators and me when I was being an idiot." Amanda was vaguely aware that several people were now openly recording this moment, but she couldn't focus on anything except Frederick's face. "You showed me that strength isn't about controlling circumstances. It's about facing them with courage and grace. You taught me that partnership means supporting each other's battles, not fighting them for each other. And you made me want to be worthy of loving someone as extraordinary as you." Frederick pulled out a ring box, and Amanda heard Claire make a strangled noise of excitement. "I love your terrible bowling technique, and your penguin tattoo, and the way you make scared children laugh. I love watching you work and listening to you argue with me about my avoidance strategies. I love that you see people's potential instead of their limitations. And I love that you made me believe I could be better than I was." Amanda realized she was crying, but she didn't care. "So Amanda Thompson, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life supporting your dreams and learning from your courage and probably losing arguments about whether pineapple belongs on pizza?" "It doesn't belong on pizza," Amanda said through her tears, and the entire ballroom erupted in laughter. "Is that a yes to the pizza thing or the marriage thing?" Frederick asked, grinning. "Yes to the marriage thing, no to pineapple pizza. Forever and always no to pineapple pizza." Frederick slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect diamond surrounded by small sapphires that matched her dress, and kissed her to thunderous applause. "I love you, Amanda Mitchell," he whispered against her lips. "That's not my name yet," Amanda laughed. "It will be soon, and then you'll be stuck with me forever." "Good," Amanda said, kissing him again, "because I plan to keep you very busy for the next 60 years. As the celebration swirled around them, Claire crying and hugging anyone within reach, business leaders offering congratulations, photographers capturing every moment, Amanda realized that her life had become something she'd never dared to imagine. She'd found love with someone who saw her strength instead of her limitations, who supported her independence instead of trying to replace it, who'd turned his resources towards solving systemic problems instead of just protecting her from them. She'd gained not just a partner, but someone who made her braver, kinder, and more hopeful about what they could accomplish together. "No regrets?" Frederick asked quietly as they swayed together during their impromptu first dance, her wheelchair spinning gracefully as he guided her around the floor. "Only one," Amanda said, smiling up at him. "What's that?" "I regret that it took a broken wheelchair battery and the insurance company crisis for me to realize that lying about being paralyzed on a blind date was the best decision I ever made." Frederick threw back his head and laughed. The rich, Delighted sound she'd fallen in love with that very first night. In that case, he said, spinning her one more time, here's to terrible decisions that lead to perfect endings. Perfect beginnings, Amanda corrected. This is just the beginning. And as they danced, surrounded by friends and family and the promise of adventures yet to come, Amanda knew with absolute certainty that loving Frederick Mitchell had been worth every risk, every complication, and every terrifying moment of vulnerability, because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is also the most extraordinary. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who scares you the most turns out to be the one who helps you become exactly who you were meant to be.